My name is Corrigan-Gibbs, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and I joined CSAIL this year. My research focuses on building computer systems that do a better job of protecting their users' privacy and security. So one thing I've been working on, for example, is how we can design systems that let a user query a database without revealing to the database what the user's query is. And this has applications to privacy-preserving advertising, to privacy-preserving search, privacy-preserving, you can imagine Netflix doing this, and a bunch of other systems. The reason this is interesting to me is because we know that computer systems get broken into all the time. And so I'd like to move us into a world in which when a server gets broken into, it's not holding any sensitive user information unencrypted that can then be stolen and sold off or abused in some way that would end up harming the end users. The end goal of my research is to move us into a world in which our computer systems do a much better job of protecting the privacy and the security of our data and our systems themselves. So for example, I would like to live in a world in which you can browse the internet without leaving digital traces at different websites that you're visiting about what you've been doing, about what your interests are, about maybe your personal financial information, all of this stuff that leaks out to the internet as you're browsing today. I'd like to figure out a way to keep private. The reason that that's important is that we use the internet for essentially everything today. We put so much trust into our computer systems, and our computer systems haven't been doing a very good job of safeguarding our information and protecting our own interests. So I think the challenge of this work is figuring out a way to maintain the functionality that we have in our computer systems, right? The performance, the low cost, the ability to communicate across the world in milliseconds, and at the same time design these systems in a way that doesn't leak our sensitive information over the network. One of the projects that I've been working on has to do with improving the way that manufacturers collect data about how we use our devices. So for example, when you're browsing the internet, the company that makes your web browser, whether it's Google or Mozilla or Apple, is collecting information about how you're navigating the internet. So for example, if your web browser crashes on a certain website, that URL gets sent back to the browser vendor so that they can debug the issue. One of the systems I've been working on is designed to allow a vendor to collect that type of important telemetry information or statistical information about how a product is being used without having to collect any sensitive information about the user's web browsing behavior directly. So today, when you send a URL to Google and say, here, this is a URL that crashed my browser, you're leaking to Google information about your web browsing history. And so I build systems that allow Google to collect that type of information without learning who is browsing to which website. I would say one of the greatest challenges that we face here in the US is convincing the large tech companies who are deploying lots of the computer technology that we use, that privacy is really an important issue. And I think part of the reason why that's difficult is that we've set up the incentives in such a way that tech companies often feel like they're incentivized to collect the most sensitive information about everyone they can and store it forever. And we're slowly moving into a world in which that's no longer the case, in which companies and governments recognize that there's risks to collecting lots of sensitive information and storing it forever. But at the same time, I think that shift in mentality is going to take a long time. And so that's one of the things that I've been trying to do with my work, is just re-emphasize to people that this is not for free, right? That collecting sensitive information has a cost, even if it's not borne in dollar terms by the company in the short term.